Joining us now in studios, international affairs analyst Dan Perry, former Europe and Middle East editor of the Associated Press. Good afternoon, my friend. A lot to talk about. I mean, this information just crossed about, an operation near Gaza City with leaflets with some of the hostages. Obviously, we cannot make any assumptions, but the last time that kind of message was released was 3 weeks ago when that daring hostage rescue took place.
And was successful.
And
Killed a lot of people in Gaza.
At the same time, right.
It's conceivable that another drama is happening. The fact that it's a subset of, that it's certain specific hostages whose picture was disseminated suggests intel about specific people.
And in Gaza City, which is not Rafah.
Exactly. It also sort of underscores that Israel doesn't really control Gaza City as some people think. It's very much of an amorphous mess, everything happening in Gaza. There's a notion out there in the public that Gaza's been pacified with the exception of Rafah, and the truth is somewhat different.
Not the case.
Exactly. Same thing with Nusrat, with the rescue mission from a couple of weeks ago, which is in central Gaza. So I think we have to wait and see. To a degree, the less said the better. Obviously, The military is not announcing anything, but there does appear to be something happening in the north of the Strip involving specific hostages and messages being sent to the population, asking for information about them, warning the population that something might be up. So it's going to be very tense day.
Cross our fingers and hope, and not get our hopes our expectations too high.
In Israel, clearly,
if it's true, it would be another reason to celebrate.
Aspiration for more and more hostage rescues, and there is hope today that something of that sort may be brewing.
Right. Meanwhile, the Israeli man who was shot dead in his car this morning in the West Bank city of Qalqilia reportedly went there to buy vegetables. An unnamed source in the Palestinian Authority's security forces tells Israel's Khan broadcaster that the vegetables he bought were in the car. You can see the car going up in flames. Apparently, he was shot, and then the car was lit on fire. IDF security forces have been operating in the area, investigating the incident, of course, looking for the perpetrators. So obviously, we have a lot to think about, multi-fronts, and we know things heating up in the north, what's going on in the south, and now this incident in the West Bank today.
Qalqilia is Area A, the disconnected islands of full Palestinian control. Israel security forces can still go in and out if they really need to, but generally speaking, they don't. Israeli citizens are not supposed to go there. And in the particular case of Qalqilia, it is, we call it a Palestinian city in the West Bank, but in reality, it is right across the border from Kfar Saba. I mean, it's
that close.
It's a mile or two away from the Israeli town of Kfar Saba, divided by a massive security wall. And I can't imagine why an Israeli citizen would go to buy vegetables.
Yeah, right. I mean, how much can you save on, right?
A very foolish gamble.
Oh, yeah, a real and a tragic lesson. And let's talk about also the ICRC. We didn't address that before. Obviously, the ICRC has been anything but fair and reasonable where it comes to Israel during this war. But the IDF saying, nope, it wasn't us. So essentially, what could it be? Could it be, something fired from Gaza that just didn't cross the border?
There have been cases in the past, with a hospital, of course, in October, I believe it was, where it turned out to be Islamic Jihad, not even Hamas. There's any number of potential parties that could have fired something at someone. In the case of these installations, always a suspicion arises that maybe the narrative is that Hamas or some other terrorist group is using the civilian facilities to store weapons, to locate launchers, and maybe Israel targeted them. Now, that hasn't happened yet with the Red Cross. We can only speculate because we just don't know the facts, but this doesn't seem to be in that direction because no one's blaming Israel.
Right. Well, and in the past, Israel would say, Israel's looking into it, but much more forthright, like what had happened, obviously.
I'd be surprised if Israel targeted the ICRC knowingly. That said, what you alluded to before is also true. I mean, Israel's very upset with the Red Cross for not doing enough to gain access to the hostages.
And not delivering medicine, and it's been one.
I mean, and I've spoken to them about this, and I know their narrative, which is that we do things behind the scenes, and our entire ethos is based on not publicly taking sides. Israel wants the ICRC to say nasty things about Hamas. They just won't.
But also, in a way, saying nothing is also taking
It
sides in
creates
many
the
ways.
impression of a false equivalence that, whereas perhaps in the case of the Red Cross is a little bit understandable because they do good works in this through this way of being, it fits into a broader pattern that is a lot less understandable. For example, Guterres yesterday, again, in the case of Hezbollah, making an outrageously false equivalence, suggesting this is a tit for tat and a mutual escalation in the north, as if Israel just feels like firing at Hezbollah, when the truth is, of course, that Israel is under attack from a neighboring country since the second week of October. And the UN can't get it together to say that this is wrong and that effectively Lebanon is attacking Israel. For them, it's a tit for tat.
Yeah.
So it's in that context that Israelis
Gotta
are unhappy with the
consider
ICRC's, neutrality.
Right.
We have nothing to do with the war. On the contrary, we help in order to bring peace to the region, and we provide help to the Palestinians. That's why I feel safe in Cyprus.
All right, back with Dan Perry here to analyze this story. It was just one of those stories that came out and you don't even think about it. And obviously, for Nasrallah to say something on that level, why bring Cyprus into this story?
Because of suspicion that Cyprus may lend Israel even indirect assistance in a possible attack on Hezbollah. But the bigger picture is that they don't feel deterred. It really is remarkable. After the 2006 war, there was a narrative that said that Nasrallah is very much deterred, hiding in a bunker, will never again dare to threaten Israel, never mind anyone else. And for a while, that was largely true. At this point, it's gone. The degree of brazenness that one needs to make threats in public this way against an EU member nation, completely indifferent to the fact that Germany and France may be upset by it, really tells you what the mindset of Hezbollah is right now. And I think Israel factors that in. Because for Israel, the question is, if we make a move against Hezbollah to force them away from the border, to make the point that firing rockets at us for the past 8.5 months is not acceptable, would they dare fire rockets at Haifa and Tel Aviv and try to kill 10,000 people in Israel and knock down a Facebook tower in Tel Aviv? Could they possibly dare do that? When Nasrallah is threatening an EU nation as openly and smilingly as he did, the suggestion is that possibly, yes, he might. And where that goes, nobody knows. But one possibility is that Israel is therefore deterred. It's awful to contemplate, but I have to conclude that the only reason Israel's put up with this outrage for the past 8 months is because Israel indeed feels deterred by the arsenal of Iron Dome impervious rockets that Hezbollah has been foolishly allowed to accumulate over the past decade as they were supposedly deterred.
This showdown is without parallel. The nation's 45th and 46th presidents, still seeking to define one another in the earliest general election debate in memory. An old duel being fought on new ground.
All right, we're back with Dan Perry. I cannot believe that 4 years has gone by since we saw the two in this debate. I think it's going to be like, a Mike Tyson match. It's as crazy as it is. It's going to be something where, a real... no love lost between those two.
Mike
put it that way.
Tyson at 80.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Mike Tyson at 80.
You watch this in amazement. I mean, America has a credible case for being the greatest nation on earth, and these are the two candidates that somehow have contrived to be the candidates.
At such an important time in history, too.
Critical time. Yeah. I mean, Trump talks a lot of nonsense, but when he said in the debate a couple of years ago that, we risk World War III, that was true. And it's more true today. And look, Trump is a convicted felon. He's a person whose own party's leadership, like McConnell, is blaming him for a deadly riotous insurrection at the Capitol. He's among the least popular politicians in America, and that now applies to Biden as well, who is the oldest candidate to ever conceive of running for president, and who's visibly and disturbingly slowed by the years. I mean, and understandably so. I'm not saying anything about his mental faculties, but he looks slowed.
Yeah.
And this is causing a lot of concern. And meanwhile, the Democrats are, of course, terrified of the insurgent candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, so
And if-
talk about that, because he may be the silent horse. I mean, running as an independent, obviously the son of Bobby Kennedy, and you are also on his podcast. So, I mean, where does he stand? I mean, you don't really, we hear some inklings, we see him working out and he's in shape, but not taking part in the debate.
He's a relative youth compared to these guys.
Yes, true.
Very sharp, very, very interested in Israel. We did have a conversation about what is needed to bring about peace in the Middle East. And by the way, I argued that America needs to carry a bigger stick with all sides. And be more activist. That clearly won't be Trump. Trump is, if anything, has an isolationist gene in his DNA. And it also isn't Biden, who's tolerating the Houthis' madness in Yemen, more or less. So anyway,
And
Robert
hasn't
F.
been able to
Kennedy,
get even the American hostages back, right?
Robert F. Kennedy is a very dangerous insurrectionist candidate for the Democrats, because his history, of course, is Democratic. And in American elections, because it's winner take all and the plurality suffices, when a third party candidate attaches more to one side than the other, it divides the vote and guarantees the victory of the other side.
Right.
That's what happened with Perot, who got Clinton elected. That's
Right.
what happened with Nader,
Ross
who got
Perot, wow.
Nader got Bush Jr. elected, and the fear is that Kennedy will get Trump elected. Now, Kennedy argues that he actually takes from Trump as well, and polls suggest it's true to a degree, but everything is on a knife's edge. Remember, because of America's very bizarre electoral system, even though Biden won by like almost 8 million votes, in the 4 key states that flipped it for him, the sum total is some tens of thousands of votes.
Right, and the
that was a
electoral-
margin. He can't afford to lose 1/100th of 1%.
Well, is it true, you think, that in a way it comes down to Pennsylvania because it's really evenly split, that, you know, because it's such a big, they have so many more, obviously, electoral votes, it really could come down
Pennsylvania,
to 1 or 2
Michigan,
states.
Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. It comes down to a handful of states. And I mean, again, it's a bizarre electoral system. The others don't matter. The biggest states in the U.S., population-wise, New York and California, don't matter. because they're automatically Democratic.
Right.
No one even bothers to go there. So basically, they've made tremendous efforts to keep Robert F. Kennedy Jr. off the debate stage.
But even legally,
next Thursday.
doesn't he have to be included in a debate? It's
the legal bit is a bit
presidential
fuzzy.
debates throughout history have been like so important to the election.
Here's how fuzzy it is. Presidential debates, and it's not exactly like state law, but the regulations guiding them, for one thing, at this point, require the people on stage to have been nominated by some party. Note that neither Biden nor Trump are yet the nominee, because the conventions haven't happened in either case.
And Trump's going to be sentenced before the convention, which will be, what does that mean?
Utter insanity. But of course, the fact that they agreed to this shows you that Biden feels he needs a game changer.
Yeah.
So Biden had better be on his best game next Thursday.
Wow, everybody's going to be watching. Even the issues aside, it's just to see those two going at it again is going to make headlines for sure. Dan Perry, thank you very much for your insight, as always.